The incredible story of Starbucks began in 1981 when Howard Schultz, a kitchenware salesman, noticed something odd. There was a tiny company in Seattle that kept placing unusually large orders for manual coffee makers. This company was Starbucks, and at the time it was just a small chain of 4 stores. No one else in the United States was buying so many manual coffee makers. Howard couldn't stop thinking about it. Why did people love this little coffee shop so much, while the rest of the country used electric coffee machines? Driven by curiosity, Howard decided to visit Seattle and see for himself what was happening at Starbucks. When he arrived in Seattle and approached the Starbucks door, the rich aroma of coffee pulled him inside. The place felt almost sacred, like a temple devoted to coffee. Behind a worn wooden counter stood baskets filled with beans from all over the world. Sumatra, Kenya, Ethiopia, Costa Rica. At that time, most Americans thought coffee came straight from a can, but Starbucks sold whole bean coffee. People preferred manual coffee makers because they enjoyed the brewing process, and the coffee didn't burn as it often did in electric machines. A barista handed Howard a freshly brewed cup. The steam and aroma seemed to wrap around his face, and adding sugar or milk was considered a sin. Howard took a sip, and his eyes widened in surprise. He was captivated by the extraordinary taste. It was the strongest, richest coffee he had ever tried. Starbucks roasted their beans dark, believing that this brought out the full, true flavor of coffee. Everything Howard had drunk before now seemed bland in comparison. He wanted to learn how to make coffee like this and began asking the staff about different beans and roasting methods. Howard's curiosity led him to the Starbucks roasting plant, where he met the company's owners, Jerry Baldwin and Gordon Bowker. Once again, he was overwhelmed by the rich aroma of roasting coffee. He wondered why these 2 men had dedicated their lives to coffee. At that point, Starbucks was already 10 years old, but the founders had never dreamed of building a business empire. They started Starbucks for one simple reason. They loved coffee and wanted Seattle to have access to the best beans. In the United States, the world's richest country, the coffee market was dominated by low-quality blends. Most coffee consumed was cheap Robusta, and even whole bean coffee was often mixed with inferior beans to cut costs. The first Starbucks opened in 1971, offering 30 varieties of whole bean coffee. It was just a store. Coffee wasn't even sold by the cup yet, but a tradition of talking to customers and sharing knowledge about good coffee was born. And this personal touch quickly grew their customer base. For the founders, quality was everything. They were purists, not interested in appealing to the masses, but to a small group of discerning customers. Most producers preferred light roast because it was more profitable, but Starbucks cared more about taste than profit. Over time, their high standards inspired admiration and loyalty, and eventually the number of customers exceeded all expectations. Howard couldn't stop thinking about Starbucks. A year later, he left his prestigious job and $75,000 salary to join the tiny company, which now had 5 stores. Many thought he was crazy, but Howard wasn't thinking about what Starbucks was. He was thinking about what it could become. He dreamed of expanding to other cities so that everyone in America could experience real coffee. He asked the owners to let him join the team, telling them, "You have a real treasure here. If you let people from other cities try your coffee, they'll fall in love with it. We could open hundreds of stores across the country." The owners hesitated, but eventually agreed and gave him a small stake in the company. Howard threw himself into the work, learning everything he could about coffee and the business. He stood behind the counter, talked to staff, roasted coffee, and learned to distinguish the subtle differences between various roasting methods. Over time, he earned the trust of the team, but the most interesting moment came later, when Howard traveled to Italy. There, he visited countless coffee bars, observing how they operated. What he saw amazed him. Graceful baristas who greeted customers by name, ground beans, and poured coffee all at once. The atmosphere was friendly and welcoming. In Italy, coffee bars were everywhere, about 20,000 of them at the time. Italians treated their coffee bars as cozy homes, and baristas were respected professionals. Howard realized this was what Starbucks was missing. Starbucks sold great coffee, but only in bags, not by the cup. In one Italian cafe, he tried a drink he'd never heard of before, a latte. He thought it would be just coffee with milk, but it was something else entirely, a perfect harmony of steamed milk and espresso. No one in America knew anything like it. Italians had turned coffee drinking into a symphony. Howard returned to Seattle inspired, but the Starbucks owners saw him as an overexcited marketing director. They insisted Starbucks was a store, not a restaurant, and selling drinks by the cup would ruin their mission. At the time, they were busy acquiring a competitor and didn't want to be distracted. But eventually, they allowed Howard to open one espresso bar in downtown Seattle. On that day, America tasted its first latte, and the store saw twice as many visitors as usual. The business grew, lines formed outside, and the cafe became a lively meeting place. However, the owners still saw this as a distraction and limited Howard to just 1 or 2 espresso bars. They believed Starbucks shouldn't become more than it was, fearing they'd lose the personal touch with customers. Howard was frustrated and eventually left Starbucks to start his own coffee bar business, convinced his idea would attract investors. Howard was determined to bring his vision to life. He needed to raise $1.7 million to open his own chain of coffee bars. He pitched his idea to anyone who would listen, but most people thought he was crazy. For a whole year, Howard was rejected by 217 out of 242 potential investors. He felt like a failure, but he kept refining his pitch and persevered. Ironically, Starbucks itself became his first investor, offering $150,000. Other investors followed, including a doctor named Ron Margolis, who immediately offered $100,000 because he trusted Howard's professionalism. Eventually, 3 business leaders from Seattle invested $750,000 as a group. All those who believed in Howard early on were richly rewarded later. Howard was initially wary of venture capital, fearing that investors would interfere with the business, but his fears proved unfounded. Instead, he gained a team of experienced advisors. On April 8, 1984, Howard opened his first coffee bar called Il Giornale, which means the daily. He recreated the Italian atmosphere, playing only Italian opera with baristas in white shirts and bow ties. There were no seats, just newspapers hanging on the walls and an Italian menu. However, not everything worked in Seattle. People grew tired of the constant opera, bow ties were impractical, and customers wanted a place to sit. Howard quickly adapted, and within 6 months, daily customer numbers grew from 300 to 1,000. The coffee bar was ahead of its time and felt like a hidden gem. The key to success was the staff. Howard inspired everyone with his passion, and the team felt like a family. After opening a second and third coffee bar, the third in Canada to show investors the potential for growth, Howard learned that the original Starbucks owners were struggling financially. In 1987, Howard Schultz bought Starbucks, merging it with Il Giornale. The new Starbucks was both a store and a coffee bar, a new kind of coffee shop, more than a store, but not quite a restaurant. Starbucks began expanding rapidly, opening more stores every year. But with growth came new challenges. Transporting coffee over long distances threatened its freshness, so Starbucks developed vacuum packaging with a one-way valve to keep coffee fresh. This innovation allowed them to expand quickly without building expensive new roasting plants. At one point, Starbucks lost 4 times more money than planned, and shareholders doubted Howard's leadership. But he insisted on investing in a team for scaling, a world-class roasting plant, and a computer system to manage hundreds of locations. These investments paid off, preparing Starbucks for the challenges of rapid growth. Starbucks faced many challenges, including a coffee price crisis caused by a frost in Brazil. Thanks to long-term contracts, Starbucks had a 10-month supply of green coffee and was able to keep prices stable while competitors raised theirs. The company also learned to optimize internally, cutting costs and improving efficiency. As Starbucks grew, customers began to complain that all the stores looked the same, while competitors offered unique designs. To address this, Starbucks experimented with store layouts, adding sofas, armchairs, and fireplaces to create a cozy atmosphere. They standardized some elements to save costs, but also created a secret design studio to develop new concepts, drawing inspiration from mythology, art, and the 4 elements: earth, fire, water, and air. Starbucks never relied on traditional advertising. Instead, they sparked word of mouth by hosting concerts and inviting influential people to their openings. When the first Starbucks opened in Tokyo, lines formed from the very first minute, even though coffee shops were already common in Japan. Starbucks invested heavily in its employees, offering health benefits and stock options even when it seemed financially risky. This reduced staff turnover dramatically, saving money on hiring and training. Howard Schultz believed that employees who felt valued would treat customers better, and this became a cornerstone of Starbucks' culture. The company encouraged open communication and innovation. One employee, Howard Behar, famously challenged the status quo, pushing for changes like offering non-fat milk, which eventually became a huge part of Starbucks sales. The company also experimented with selling jazz CDs, which turned out to be a surprising success. When Starbucks went public in 1992, many bankers doubted the company's ability to maintain its growth. But the IPO was a huge success, raising $420 million in. Starbucks stock soared, and the company became a symbol of a new coffee culture. Starbucks created a third place between home and work, a cozy retreat where people could escape daily worries. The brand became synonymous with a lifestyle, not just coffee. Even competitors welcomed Starbucks to their neighborhoods, knowing it would attract more people to the area. After the IPO in 1992, Starbucks entered a period of explosive growth. In 1992, the company opened 50 new stores. In 1993, that number doubled to 100. Wall Street analysts were amazed by Starbucks' sales figures, and the company focused its expansion on markets with affluent, educated, and culturally curious customers, people who traveled, appreciated art, and were open to new experiences. But Starbucks wasn't alone. The coffee business was becoming more competitive, with new players entering the market. To accelerate its growth on the East Coast, Starbucks made a bold move in Boston. Instead of fighting a local competitor, the Coffee Connection, a chain of 25 coffee shops, Starbucks acquired the entire chain. Along with the acquisition, Starbucks gained the recipe for a new beverage, the Frappuccino, a blend of cappuccino, milkshake, and ice cream. The Frappuccino became an instant hit, especially during hot summer days when coffee shops were usually empty. It remains one of Starbucks' most successful products to this day. By the end of 1994, Starbucks had expanded rapidly across many American cities. Opening a new store became as easy as pouring a cup of coffee thanks to a well-oiled growth machine. At its peak, Starbucks was opening a new store every day. However, growth brought new challenges. In 1994, a severe frost in Brazil, responsible for a third of the world's coffee supply, caused coffee prices to skyrocket. Starbucks' stock price fell, and the company faced a potential crisis. Fortunately, Starbucks had secured a 10-month supply of green coffee at fixed prices through long-term contracts, which protected the company from market volatility. While competitors were forced to raise prices, Starbucks kept theirs stable, even managing to turn a profit during the crisis by optimizing internal processes and cutting unnecessary costs. This period of adversity revealed weaknesses in Starbucks' contracts, planning, and resource management. Howard Schultz often noted that the company grew the most during times of crisis, learning valuable lessons that would have gone unnoticed in easier times. As Starbucks continued to expand, customers began to complain that all the stores looked the same, while smaller competitors offered unique and quirky designs. This was a blow to Starbucks' identity. To address this, the company experimented with store layouts, adding sofas, armchairs, and fireplaces to create a cozy, inviting atmosphere. In one Manhattan store, they even used worn-out couches and soft chairs bought at a garage sale, which quickly made the cafe a popular oasis for afternoon meetings. However, original design was expensive and didn't fit with the company's rapid growth strategy. Starbucks solved this by standardizing key design elements and buying furniture in bulk, reducing the time to open a new store from 24 weeks to just 18. The company also created a secret design studio, hiring architects and artists to develop new concepts. They drew inspiration from mythology, literature, and the four elements: earth, fire, water, and air, relating them to the four stages of coffee: growing, roasting, brewing, and aroma. This led to 4 distinct store designs, adding variety and character to Starbucks locations. Starbucks became famous not through traditional advertising, but by sparking word of mouth. In every new city, the company organized concerts with well-known musicians and invited influential local figures to their openings. When Starbucks opened its first store in Tokyo, a line formed from the very first minute and lasted until closing time, even though coffee shops were already common in Japan. The Starbucks brand had the same magnetic power abroad as it did in the United States. Howard Schultz never set out to build a strong brand. The brand was a byproduct of the company's passionate team and unique culture. Starbucks created a new market, not just competing for a share of the existing one. The average customer visited Starbucks 18 times a month, a testament to the company's ability to foster loyalty. Starbucks revolutionized the way service employees were treated. In the late 1980s, offering health benefits was rare, but Starbucks increased its spending on employee health care instead of cutting costs. This move seemed crazy to the board of directors, but it paid off. Staff turnover dropped from the industry average of 150–400% per year to less than 65%. Lower turnover meant lower hiring and training costs, and employees who felt valued provided better service. In 1991, Starbucks became one of the first companies in America to offer stock options to all employees, not just executives. One option was worth 12% of an annual salary, and many employees were later able to buy cars and homes with the proceeds. This policy fostered a sense of ownership and responsibility among staff, leading to new ideas for products and cost savings. Starbucks encouraged open communication and innovation. Howard Behar, a passionate and outspoken employee, pushed for changes like offering non-fat milk, which eventually became a huge part of Starbucks' savings. The company also experimented with selling jazz CDs, which turned out to be a surprising success. 75,000 CDs were sold in just a few weeks, and the album would have ranked in the top 10 jazz albums on the Billboard charts if tracked. By the mid-1990s, Starbucks had become a global phenomenon. The company's IPO in 1992 raised $420 million, and the stock price soared from $17 to $33 in just 3 months. Starbucks created a third place between home and work, a cozy retreat where people could escape daily worries, enjoy exotic coffee drinks, and connect with others. The brand became synonymous with a lifestyle, not just coffee. Today, Starbucks operates in more than 80 countries, with over 35,000 stores worldwide. The company continues to innovate, introducing new beverages, expanding its food menu, and investing in sustainability initiatives. Starbucks sources 99% of its coffee through ethical practices and aims to become resource positive, reducing its environmental footprint. Starbucks' journey from a small Seattle shop to a global icon is a story of passion, perseverance, and the belief that a cup of coffee can bring people together and change the world. As the world entered the digital age, Starbucks embraced technology to enhance the customer experience. In 2009, Starbucks launched its own mobile app, allowing customers to pay, order ahead, and collect rewards points with ease. The Starbucks Rewards loyalty program became one of the most successful in the world, with over 30 million active members by 2024. The app's convenience and personalization features help Starbucks stay ahead of competitors and adapt to changing consumer habits. Starbucks also pioneered mobile ordering and payment, making it possible for customers to skip the line and pick up their drinks at their convenience. By 2020, more than a quarter of all Starbucks transactions in the US were made through the app. The company continued to innovate with features like voice ordering, delivery partnerships, and even experimenting with AI-powered recommendations. Starbucks' global journey has been marked by both rapid expansion and thoughtful adaptation to local cultures. By 2024, Starbucks operated in over 80 countries, with more than 36,000 stores worldwide. In China, Starbucks became a symbol of modern urban life, opening thousands of stores and even launching a Starbucks Reserve Roastery in Shanghai, the largest Starbucks in the world. The company has always paid attention to local tastes and traditions. In Japan, Starbucks introduced matcha lattes and cherry blossom-themed drinks. In India, the menu features masala chai and regional snacks. This ability to blend global consistency with local flavor has been key to Starbucks' international success. In recent years, Starbucks has made sustainability a core part of its mission. The company sources 99% of its coffee through ethical practices, working with farmers to ensure fair wages and environmentally friendly methods. Starbucks is committed to becoming resource positive, aiming to cut its carbon, water, and waste footprints in half by 2030. Starbucks has also invested in recyclable and compostable packaging, promoted reusable cups, and launched programs to support coffee-growing communities around the world. The company, as Greener Stores initiative, aims to build thousands of eco-friendly locations powered by renewable energy. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 posed unprecedented challenges for Starbucks and the entire food service industry. Many stores temporarily closed, and the company had to rethink its operations. Starbucks responded by accelerating its digital transformation, expanding drive-through and curbside pickup options, and prioritizing the safety of both customers and employees. Despite the difficulties, Starbucks emerged stronger with a renewed focus on community, connection, and innovation. The company continued to support its partners, employees, with expanded benefits, mental health resources, and opportunities for career growth. Today, Starbucks is more than just a coffee company. It is a global community, a place where people gather to work, relax, and connect. The third place concept, an inviting space between home and work, remains at the heart of the brand. Starbucks has shown that a business built on passion, quality, and respect for people can change not only the way we drink coffee, but also the way we see the world. From a single store in Seattle to a global icon, Starbucks' journey is a testament to the power of vision, resilience, and the simple joy of sharing a cup of coffee. As Howard Schultz once said, "We are not in the coffee business serving people. We are in the people business serving coffee." And so the story of Starbucks continues. One cup, one connection, and one community at a time.